This guitar is a beast. This is a Squire 50s Classic Vibe Stratocaster in beautiful white blonde, and I know what some of you might be thinking. Ew, is that a Squire? I only play Fenders, man. And look, part of me said the same thing and was a little hesitant to give this guitar the time of day. But I was fiending for a Strat in the studio, and when I brought this baby home and plugged it in for the first time, wow. Let's talk about it. Quick story with how I ended up with this guitar. One day, I impulse bought an Epiphone Dot off of Facebook Marketplace. And it was cool for about a week, but I found it a little boring and a little flat, not really usable on any songs that I was producing at the time. What I really needed was that fourth position Strat sound that everyone loves, and even the neck pickup sound. So just as impulsively, I packed up the Epiphone Dot and brought it to my nearest mom and pop store to trade it in to see if they had any Strats. And on the rack, they had two different Strats. They had the 50s Classic Vibe, and they had a really cheap $100, $200 Starcaster Strat. Now, because I was able to trade in the Epiphone Dot for about $300+, I was able to get this Squire Classic Vibe for an extra 70 something dollars, which would have brought it out to about $400. I didn't even plug it in at the store. I honestly didn't really care, so I brought it home and gave it the biggest grain of salt and was ready to kind of trade it back in case it sucked. But quite obviously, that was not the case. Okay, so shallowness out the way, this guitar looks really beautiful. Literally, if someone scraped off this little Squire logo, I would have assumed that this was a baseline Fender Mexican Strat, without a doubt. When I first picked up the guitar, I actually wasn't a huge fan of the white blonde look. Something about this stripe of wood that you can just barely see bothered me a lot, but I think I just have mild OCD or something. And down the line, and after some convincing of my guitar friends, I learned to kind of love it. It's kind of cool. It's very unique. Everything about the neck also felt right, which we'll get into later on in the video. The tuners as well, which we'll also get into later on in the video. And I would say the only thing that felt pretty cheap about this guitar is the pick guard and some of the electronics. Like, even if you just tap it, it has that plastic feel compared to some other Fender pick guards where you can tell that it wasn't just the cheapest plastic they could choose. But at the end of the day, I don't really care. I feel like I don't care about the quality of the pick guard as much as other people do, as long as this thing doesn't also break off as easily. And I've honestly felt worse from other Starcaster or beginning set Stratocasters. But let's be honest, the looks don't really matter in comparison to the most important aspect, which is how it sounds. My first impression on the sound is that, of course, it does the fourth position Strat sound beautifully well. It even has like a really nice neck pickup, but the second I started to get to the bridge, I don't know if I just hate bridge pickups, but if there is a reason why this guitar would sound cheap, it all lives here, because I would always have to dial back this tone knob a bunch, no matter what amp sim I was using, no matter what tone I was trying to get. It goes quack. It's just not a fan. Now, I've only ever played borrowed Fender Stratocasters that end up in the studio, and I've never owned one, so the only comparison I really have is to my Fender Telecaster Thinline Deluxe. Now, before I make this comparison, please take it with the biggest grain of salt, because yes, while this is a Fender, it's a Chinese-made model. It's one of the cheaper Telecasters that I bought at the time, and so the quality is actually closer to the Squire than even the baseline Fender Mexican. Now, right off rip, you can kind of see that this guitar build is pretty similar. You can especially see it with the necks. I don't know if they're the exact same woods, but they kind of look the same. This one's a little darker, so it might be a different wood. I'll have the facts up on screen right now. If you look at the tuners, they're basically the same thing. The finish on the neck is the same, except for the fact that I sanded my Telecaster down, which I might end up doing for the Stratocaster too. And in regards to the pick guard, you can kind of tell that on the Fender, it's not just your typical plastic pick guard. It's probably a couple layers deep, and I really feel like that's the only thing that this Fender might have over this Squire. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that the fact that this Squire is pretty close in quality to what is known as a Fender blows my mind. There's always been this thought that the off-brand companies like Squire and Epiphone will never live up to their big brother counterparts. And maybe for a period of time that might have been true, especially when you start to look at Squires that were in starter packs or Starcasters or anything that's really below $200. But the fact that this guitar is pretty affordable and the build quality is pretty on par with even baseline Fenders, you just remove the fact that this is a Squire and you're playing something that can be used on a bunch of different records. I know because I've already put it on a bunch of different records. And that fact alone and its usability is already proof to me that even if it is cheaper, it's a million times worth it. Now, what would I say to you if you wanted to get this guitar? I would say that if you're in a pinch to get that Strat sound, then definitely get this model. It's not the best Strat I ever played in my life. And if you wanted to upgrade it, what I would end up doing is just changing the pickups. You can probably get a traditional Fender Stratocaster pickup set, and what I would personally do to mod it is I would actually put a humbucker in the bridge. I really love that sound, especially for rock and punk sounds. I feel like this bridge pickup hasn't done the job for me, so to put a humbucker would really solve a lot of my personal issues with it. And I also don't think that I would go any cheaper than this Squire. Looking back on the day that I bought this, I was really happy that I didn't just cheap out and get that $200 Starcaster, because even from afar you can look at the build quality, and in comparison it's just night and day. I'm sure that it sounds awesome, but I'm sure that if this is already sounding like 90% there, that going lower than this would really bring it to like unusable territory or just beginner status. Which of course, if you're a beginner, then by all means get the Starcaster, but I feel like this video is targeted towards studio people and kind of the intermediate guitar people, which if this was your beginner guitar, this is an amazing beginner guitar. But what do you think about this guitar? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let me know in the comments down below. Be sure to give this video a like and share it with a friend that's thinking about picking up a Squire. Maybe they'll be influenced to get it. If you really like this video, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. We talk about a lot of different things, from guitars to studios to everything that has to do with recording, and especially everything that has to do with being a music producer. And I feel like guitars is a really big part of my career, which is why I want to start introducing more guitar videos. So as always, I love you. I will catch you next time. You want to say hi to YouTube? I'm filming right now. Wait, hold up.
Hello, YouTube.
Good, I needed a post-credit scene.